21 people in so far.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on your location, and welcome to our Space News event on one of the critical issues in the space industry today, which is recruiting and retaining top talent. I am Sandra Irwin, Senior Staff Writer at SpaceNews. And as we all know, in the space sector has been expanding at a tremendous rate across the commercial, civil, and national security segments of the industry. And with this growth comes an immense need for skilled workers. Today, we're going to hear from a panel of executives and experts on what strategies companies are using to win the race for talent. We would like to thank Millennium Space Systems for being a presenting sponsor of this webinar. Millennium Space Systems, part of the Boeing company, is a manufacturer of small satellites founded in 2001 in El Segundo, California. We will now see a short video from Millennium Space, and then I will introduce the panel. Great. So it is my pleasure now to introduce our panelists. And before I do that, I would like to encourage everyone in the audience to submit questions. You can do that in the Q&A function of our Zoom. So please start doing that as soon as you would like, and I will try to get to as many questions as possible. So to start off, I would like to introduce Josh Madrigal, Vice President at Millennium Space Systems. Josh, welcome, and please tell us about what you do.
Sure. Thank you, Sandra, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone. So I lead all of contracts at Millennium Space Systems, and for those of you that are on the panel and the resident attendees, we are a small sat constellation mission provider focusing on national security space, such as missile warning and missile tracking, advanced space, and TAC ISR. And I'm really excited to be here with everyone and looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you so much. Next, we have Kaylin Poley joining us from Long Beach, Employee Experience Specialist at Terran Orbital Corporation. Kaylin, welcome, and please tell us about what you do.
Thank you. So my name is Kaylin. I work as the Employee Experience Specialist, and I help navigate our culture as we transition from a startup to a bigger business. And Terran Orbital is also a small manufacturer of satellites, and we primarily serve civil, commercial, and government customers.
Great. Thank you, Kaylin. Next, we have Joe Rice joining us from Colorado. He's Director of Space and Local Government Relations at Lockheed Martin Space. Joe, welcome, and please share with us what you do.
Thank you, Sandra. It's great to be here. Thanks to my the fellow panelists as well, and everybody for joining us. So I help coordinate state and local government relations in the states in which Lockheed Martin Space has a big presence. So that's primarily Alabama, California, Colorado, and Florida, though there are many others. And that includes working a lot with state and local governments, community colleges, universities, other education, and workforce partners on what our key topic is today, workforce. And then personally, also I have over 30 years of military experience, mostly in the Army National Guard and Reserve. So I also had a civilian job while I served in the military. And that also included several deployments to places like Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Iraq. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Tom Roeder, also joining us from Colorado. He's a senior data analyst for the Space Foundation. Tom, welcome, and please tell us about you, what you do.
Well, good morning from Colorado. We're about to get our first snow of the season. Here at Space Foundation, I support a bunch of different functions. I write for the Space Report, which is our quarterly magazine. I also support Symposium 365, which delivers year-round content for our partners. And one of my main jobs is tracking workforce issues and the numbers behind the numbers to see what's going on long term, to support our Center for Innovation and Education, which is trying to help the industry drive its workforce.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. So now the Q&A, we're going to start the Q&A, and my colleague, Deborah Warner, will lead that. She is SpaceNews senior correspondent who has done a lot of reporting on the workforce challenges facing the defense industry, and she will be leading the Q&A. Thank you, Deborah. Take it away.
Thanks, Sandra, and thank you everyone for joining us today. This topic, this workforce topic, comes up in every conversation I have with people from the Air Force Research Lab, the Rapid Space Capabilities Office, to a 5-person startup. They are all looking for talent. They're looking for engineers, technicians, program managers, and a wide array of different skills. And so, we've been reporting a lot more on this at SpaceNews, since this is what our readers are grappling with. Tom, I'd like to ask you to set the stage by telling us about the workforce, how large it is, and if it's growing or shrinking.
So here in the United States right now, we've got a workforce of about 156,000 in the space industry, and that's showing steady growth, about 3% per year at this rate, but it could be growing much more swiftly. One of the big flashing yellow lights for us is if you go to job sites like Space Talent, you'll find around 15,000 openings at any given point. Many of those postings for multiple jobs in that category. So a 10% vacancy rate in the space industry as it transitions from building satellites one at a time to mass production is a big flashing yellow light. The other thing that we're seeing is the kind of the seed corn for the industry. Your engineering majors, we're down by about 100,000 in undergrad engineering students over the past 5 years. We're also seeing fairly significant drops in the number of skilled tradespeople who could enter the space industry. That's down by about 40,000 at two-year schools in recent years. So warning signs ahead, and definitely we're seeing industry grasping for some really creative solutions out there. I look forward to seeing how people are getting it done.
Thanks, Tom. So turning to you, Joe, when we spoke recently, you talked about the need to expand the workforce geographically and demographically. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. So yeah, like Tom said, there's a growing need, right? The space industry is growing, and then demographically, you've heard universities, colleges talk about the demographic cliff, right? There's fewer students coming up in that pipeline than compared to what there traditionally has been. So you can see the math problem there, right? You know, there's a growing need and declining kind of sources. So we have to find new places and get new people engaged, people who haven't, and groups, people, demographics, areas that haven't been engaged before. And so that's really why I think we use the term, we're trying to expand geographically and demographically. And you think, you know, demographic means a lot of things. Like, you know, first look at some of the data that's been put out by Pew Research that shows on women in the workforce, right? They tend to be overrepresented in career fields such as healthcare and underrepresented in fields such as physical sciences, computing, and engineering. That's where we are. So you can see the opportunity there. A lot of it, even and I'm just use one example, right? We work across the country. Lockheed Martin has facilities across the country, but right where I'm sitting right now, we're sitting within a 10-mile radius of around a 10-mile radius of 3 school districts that are among the top performing school districts and 3 of the most challenged school districts within 10 miles from where we sit. And you look at, there's some neighborhoods where a lot of people work for Lockheed Martin or United Launch Alliance or Sierra Space or some of the other aerospace companies that tend to be in this area, and they know about these kind of opportunities, and that's great. We want them to know about them, and we want them to continue to come in to the industry. But even just a few miles away, or a few blocks away, there are people that really don't know we exist, right? We all tend to live in our socioeconomic bubbles, and we think that everybody knows about space because it's so cool, and it is. But there are places where that's just not, if they don't know somebody who works in the industry, they may not know of those opportunities. And when they do know of them, right, a lot of people tend to think aerospace is for rocket scientists. And it absolutely is. If you're a rocket scientist or want to become work with us. But there are a lot of skill sets that are required in this industry. We use the phrase we need from GEDs to PhDs. And yes, it's a lot of STEM. We do need a lot of STEM. But you think about what enables these STEM activities, right? The engineering, the design, the production. There's a lot of logistics, procurement, HR, communications, transportation, lots of things that are not necessarily STEM. So we need to reach out to new groups, and we need to reach out in new areas. And the rise of remote work is part of that, right? That there are some jobs, right? If you're building hardware or you're working in a classified environment, you have to be on site at least most of the time. But there are some jobs that don't need to be in the office at all or much of the time. And then simply also just kind of growing the clusters, right? We've had great experience through some organizations, maybe we'll get a chance to talk about, of doing outreach trips to communities that are outside the traditional where aerospace companies are located. And now we have successful aerospace companies, maybe a machine shop that decided they want to get, there's an example, SG Aerospace and Gas in Grand Junction, Colorado, wanted to get into the aerospace industry and worked with Lockheed Martin and many other of the prime contractors, and now is doing significant work in the aerospace industry. That's just one example. We need to help address that math problem and get out and reach new communities and new areas. And of course, there's some overlap of both new communities and new areas and areas in which are right next door to us.
Thanks, Joe. Tom, does the Space Foundation have any data on the demographics of this industry?
Actually, we have quite a bit. One of the big demographic issues that the industry is facing is your average aerospace engineer at this point has been to their 25th high school reunion. So we're seeing a graying of the workforce, and we're seeing large percentage of NASA workers, for instance, eligible for retirement. That cliff effect that is fairly terrifying. There are a lot of different ways to look at the industry. There are codes through the Bureau of Economic Analysis and things like that. But one of the issues I think that we all face is we're not getting the exacting numbers we would like that represent exactly how swiftly this industry has grown, because I don't think the definitions of a space worker have kept up with the number of people working in space. As Mr. Rice said, you need people in a huge variety of fields associated with space, and that's only going to be growing as we reach out to low Earth orbit with commercial stations, and as we continue to march to the moon and Mars.
Thank you. So, Kaylin, there's been a lot of talk about the demographics of this industry in terms of the fact that historically it was very white and male. And when I talk to CEOs across the country, they seem to want to change that and are working to change that. And I know this is an area of your expertise. So what do you advise companies to do if they are serious about diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I think that it is important to make sure that the intentions are meaningful behind why they're wanting to do it. Are they looking to get more into diversity, equity, and inclusion just to check that box? Or are they doing it because they actually believe that having that diversity of minds is going to help them grow their business? And I think that one of the best ways to begin working towards that goal is by looking at the practices that are already in place, the policies that are in place. And it doesn't have to be just, what does the leadership team look like? What does the workforce look like? But are the practices also being inclusive of everyone that you're looking to bring in? And that can go anywhere from the hiring practices to health benefits, and just looking at the different ways that you can attract new talent through what you have to offer in your company.
Thanks. So Josh, I understand Millennium has something called employee resource groups. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and I just definitely agree with the rest of the panelists on the points that they touched on, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to come circle back to kind of piggyback on some of the things that were said. But to answer your question regarding employee resource groups, we have several that we stood up a couple years ago, and they are employee run and managed, and really they are set up to foster awareness and really create environments where young professionals can get together and really just collaborate. And one specifically that resonates with me and that is near and dear to my heart is what we call Fuerza Millennial, which is Millennium Force, translated into English from Spanish. And I'm the executive sponsor for that particular ERG group. And I've been able to connect with individuals more on a personal basis and understand where they're coming from, both personally and where they're headed professionally, and help be their voice from an LT level and advocate for them. So the ERG groups are a fantastic way to really build advocacy for certain groups and allies. And so being an executive sponsor for what we call Fuerza Millennial has really given me that opportunity and platform to help those individuals.
That's great. It's also interesting to me that Millennium's VP of Contracts is focused on this and talking about this.
So I don't know that it's interesting for sure, but I'd say the short answer of that is we are in a state of rapid growth. And so it is an imperative for all leadership team members to share this responsibility to help scale the company and help recruit and retain the best talent the industry has to offer.
Deborah, if I could just make one comment on it, on the specifics of this diversity that we're all working towards. So Lockheed Martin we made some great strides in our diversity of our 6 main business units in space. So the leaders, the vice presidents, general managers of the 6 main business units in space. We recently have made some progress in our diversity, and now that we have 2 men in that group, it used to be all 6 women. So I think at the senior leader levels, there are some good things happening. Now, I'm not making light of the issue. There certainly is real work to be done across the board. And one of the things that many of our companies have done is at the Space Symposium, Tom, last year, there was a program, a support called Space Workforce 2030. And that's a collaborative effort amongst multiple companies. Many of, I think all of us here have signed on to it to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it is through things like Josh talked about and Kaylin talked about, that we really need to reach into different groups within our own organizations, as well as in recruiting our own organizations to make sure people know they can come into these vocations and feel welcome and feel supported in them.
So one of the things that's really interesting, we're getting a lot of questions, and Sandra will start asking some of them, but it's great to know that people are truly engaging and not watching this in the background while they do something else. They want to ask you questions.
Oh yeah, they sure do. I think we have some questions from people looking for jobs. We also have questions from students. We have questions from people that are hiring, and everyone needs advice from you guys. So, and before I go into the question, somebody asked, is the video from this webinar going to be made available? The answer is yes, of course. It will be made available later on, so no worries. So one question comes from someone in Canada who has a master's in physics and advanced master's in space studies, has experience in optical systems used for exoplanets. This person wishes to work in designing cameras and telescopes for space missions and would like to know what companies would be maybe suitable for somebody with that background. Anybody wants to take that one?
We'll take them. So yeah, we have, let's see, right now I checked this morning, over 3,500 job openings at Lockheed Martin. So, and out of 116,000, so that's what, about a 3% vacancy rate. So we're doing pretty good compared to the average that Tom talked about. But I would encourage, yeah, this is a great place. This is a great industry to work for. All these companies do cool and important things. I think Lockheed Martin does cool and important things. And I encourage you to go to LockheedMartinJobs.com and also these other partners and other people in the industry and read through some of the job descriptions to see what matches your skills and your interests. A lot of times people, when you look, you don't know what to apply for. And that's, I think I suggest to people to do some research and read through some jobs, even if from the title, you might not know what it is or think it's interesting, because you might find something that you didn't know that's what we called it, and it might fit your skill set and your interests. So that's what I would encourage people to do. And then a quick piece of advice, what I see in my experience, 2/3 of people don't do. So if you take this advice I'm about to give you, you'll automatically be in about the top third of job applicants. So still more to go, but that's a good place to be. And that's, make sure you customize or consider customizing your resume, your application to the keywords for the position that you're applying for. Even if you have the experience, but it's described differently, like somebody might call something procurement, but it might be on your resume as supply chain. Make sure those change the keywords to match the keywords for the position you are applying for, and you'll automatically increase your chances of being on that list of people that show up as 100% qualified for the position. So keywords is a key factor that 2/3 of people don't do.
Thank you. There's a couple of questions, not from space technologists, but people like someone who's a civil attorney, someone who's a nonprofit executive. Are there opportunities for those types of roles in the space industry?
Especially in the legal realm. We are seeing lots and lots of questions about policy and regulation that are coming up. And we are seeing the National Space Council beginning to work on regulations. So that's going to be full employment for lawyers who want to work in the space realm. And at Space Foundation, one thing we're doing is working with universities to certify space adjacent programs. So these aren't your traditional engineering programs, and these aren't your rocket scientists. These are your space lawyers, your project management professionals, just tons and tons of different job descriptions that will get everybody their place in space.
So Tom,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Please.
Sandra, no, I just wanted to piggyback off of that and on the same topic. So we've done a tremendous job. Our HR team has done a fantastic job in really opening up the aperture to see what else is out there in terms of skill sets with other industries. And we've brought in individuals from fashion, folks from tech that have those skills that are really needed, to execute our missions. And so I think, drawing back to one of the questions, I think you had mentioned someone that's, studying legal studies, that hits home with me in my particular organization with contracts. Having a very strong legal background is extremely beneficial to the contracts profession. So there are definitely a lot of different industries that can translate their work and their soft skills and experience into what we do within A&D. And Millennium is always looking for those types of perspectives and skill sets to bring in-house.
Thank you, Josh. I also wanted to bring up another question. It's an interesting question because they're asking, what are some venues where companies can advertise, the usual, LinkedIn, networking events, trade shows, marketing outreach. I mean, I know every space show that we go to, every space conference, the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, has a huge booth for recruiting. We see, other organizations do that. So I don't know, Kaylin, anybody has any advice on what other options would be recommended for promoting your companies?
Yeah, so I think university recruiting is extremely helpful, especially when you're looking at partnerships with specific universities. I went to California State University, Long Beach, and there was certain companies that really partnered heavily, at least with the School of Business. And that was kind of how some of my classmates got into their positions, was just having that partnership. And I know Terran Orbital has partnerships with California State or Cal Poly. And so we get students from there. But considering partnerships with universities or looking at different areas where, especially if you are trying to diversify your workforce, where are those candidates going to be coming from? Where can you kind of advertise where that pool is going to recognize?
Can I jump in for a second? Josh, you have these one-day events, a job fair. Is that what it's called?
Yes, you actually read my mind. I was going to jump in as well. So yes, we've had several in-person hiring events at our Millennium headquarters facility here in El Segundo. And really what that's allowed us to do is bring a lot of talent within, say an 8 to 10 hour period and do on-spot interviews, sort of like the fast dating approach. And so, we had a few hundred candidates actually come by our headquarters facility, and we're able to walk them through our facility and really show them at a high level the culture. And this is how you immerse yourself in the culture by working on the types of things that we work on. And so all that being said, we had a pretty high acceptance rate from the amount of offers that were given that day. We had about an 80% acceptance rate. So we were going to continue to do these types of in-person hiring events because, as I mentioned, we are in a state of rapid growth, and it's not just up to our talented HR team, but the leadership team shares this responsibility of getting creative and innovative on how we hire and bring in talent.
One of the things that I've also noticed as I go around the country is people outside the industry tell me how exciting space is. They would love to work in space, in a space-related job, but they never could because they don't have what they perceive to be the qualifications. Have other people noticed this issue, and do you have any advice for addressing it?
That's one issue that's especially dear to Space Foundation. We, through some projects, including a moon colony kit that we pushed out to elementary schools across the United States, are trying to plant that seed early with children, because if you get to them before 8th grade, they can actually make a choice about which direction they're going to head, because that's when math starts getting really hard and science starts getting really hard, and you have to have kids who choose to do the hard things so they can be a part of this industry. One thing that we've seen is, especially over the course of the COVID experience, math scores in 8th grade around the country have tumbled tremendously. But we're seeing results from schools where we worked to put curriculum in there and work to get space into their programs. It inspires kids to the point where we're actually seeing test scores going the other direction in schools that have adopted space as part of their program early. So if you can do that, you've got a big part of the future solution.
This is
To
where.
piggyback. Oh, sorry, Joe.
Please, Kaylin, you go ahead, please.
Thank you. To piggyback off of that, I think it's also important to educate children and adults alike that they should not self-select out on jobs. Mainly women and people of color will self-select out if they don't meet 100% of the requirements that they read on a job description. And it's our duty as the corporation, as well as the educators for the future generations that may be coming into aerospace, to teach them that those opportunities are there for them. And if they believe that they can do that job, if they feel that they have something to contribute, whether that's to the culture, to the organization, and that they can get that job done, that they should 100% apply.
When you
And this
say
is where the-
self-select
Oh, sorry, go
out,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Go. I just was going to clarify that, for example, if a job says you need 5 years of experience doing something and somebody has 4 years of experience, what I've heard from Kaylin and others is that women and people of color often think, well, I can't apply because I do not meet the 5 years of experience, even if I might have 8 years in an adjacent job.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you only have 3 or 4 years of experience, and we're seeing this a lot with early career, they're seeing entry-level positions where it says this is an entry level, but it requires 5 years. And if they have that experience, but it came from somewhere else and it is still applicable or it's transferable, how can they translate what they've done to ensure the company that they are going to be able to complete the job or to get that job done, and be confident about it, that they have something to contribute, and that what they are doing is just as good as someone that does have 5 years in whatever the job description was asking for.
This is the excitement of what NASA calls the Artemis generation, right? What many of you were just talking about is there is increased awareness now with going back to the moon and on to Mars, right? NASA's Artemis program, the OSIRIS-REx mission, all the great things, exciting things happening in low Earth orbit, commercial space stations on the horizon. This is exciting people again, and we need to and now we need to harness that excitement for everything you were just talking about. And there probably is a place for you. You may think there isn't, but come check us out. Come check out the aerospace industry. What we do, I keep saying it's important, it's critically important, and it's cool. And there probably is a place for you. One of the things I encourage people to do is to put yourself where the people you want to work with are. Almost in every state, there's some kind of aerospace organization that will welcome you. Maybe if you go to an event of, say, AIAA, it may take you a while to get to know somebody, or you might feel a little awkward or like you don't belong. You belong. You belong there, and if you show up a couple times, you'll meet people, you'll feel more comfortable. Hopefully there will be people that will embrace you, and then getting what you were saying about the key word, or the 5 years experience, you only have 3. If you have it, that's just where the key words come in. Make sure you get in there that you have experience similar to blah, blah, blah by doing this, right? Get the keywords in there in a legal or an ethical way, right? Don't make up experience, but look for ways to get those keywords, if it's whatever it says in the job description, and put them in there and show how your life experiences meets that. I would seek out an aerospace organization wherever you are. There are state chapters of the Aerospace States Association. AIAA, American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, offers free membership to high school students. So that's a great place for people to get involved and get on some lists where they can start to show up at events and build their professional network and learn what they might be interested in, how they might fit in, and learn what they might not be interested in. So we have a 2-week summer program that we are involved. Lockheed Martin helps coordinate through the Aerospace States Association in Alabama and Colorado, that seeks out students from these underrepresented areas, rural areas, people that don't know somebody who works in aerospace, and gives them an overview of the industry so they can learn the exciting and cool things that are out there.
Hey, Deborah, if you don't mind, I just wanted to maybe wrap up sort of this question with a specific example of what we do here at Millennium. So we're constantly always looking for transferable skills, and one specific role, our multi-layer insulation group, which is effectively how do we do thermal management of the spacecraft by using blanketing and insulation materials. And we were able to recruit an individual actually from the fashion industry. And she's doing a tremendous job in that group now. And it's just really the detail and intricacies with the level of work associated with that. But again, going back to the point of transferable skills and really opening up the aperture of really, you know, making it work and finding really the skill sets that we need to continue to execute our business.
We have a really interesting question. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to throw in one more thing. Space industries are in a great position to excite people, but the one thing that they have to pay attention to right now is they are far from alone in seeking this pool of people. America is onshoring high-tech manufacturing in a way that we have not seen since the end of World War II. That's going to be a continuing issue, and we almost need to get Hollywood involved to, you know, it's been 8 years since The Martian went out, and really start inspiring people to consider space over some of these other sectors like microchips and automotive that are essentially the same skill set.
Thanks, Tom. I wanted to bring up another question from the audience. This is from someone that works at a company that does defense work, classified work, which is very challenging because they need people with a lot of experience, and they struggle with what to do with junior talent, with all these young people that have degrees but don't have a lot of experience. They want to invest in junior talent, but it's very difficult because of their demands from the customers. So the question is, has anyone on the panel implemented any successful interventions to solve this issue, or has any particular ideas for helping fill the gap between, you know, the need to hire experts, but also wanting to build expertise organically? Maybe Joe, you want to take that one?
Yeah, the security clearance does add some additional challenges to the other challenges we already have in the aerospace industry, right? That we've just been talking about. At Lockheed Martin Space, the rough number of our jobs that require security clearances is about 3/4 within Lockheed Martin Space. So not all of them do, but that's an additional challenge for a significant part of the jobs we have. So you mentioned two parts there, right? How do you grow talent organically and then also bring in new talent from people in other industries or people with experience that don't have a clearance, right? So on the one hand, we're working with a lot of our university partners to identify people early for positions and hire them as year-round part-time interns, right? And maybe as early as their sophomore, their junior year, to give them a head start on getting a security clearance, right? They can come in, they get to know us, we get to know them, and we can put them in for a security clearance. So hopefully by the time they graduate, they'll have that clearance. And then for the experienced professionals as well, a lot of it is just is getting the word out and that these kinds of jobs exist, because a lot of people don't know clearance jobs exist, or they don't think they can get them, right? Almost an extra layer of complexity of people who don't think they qualify in aerospace, and they probably do have the skill sets, but now also they think, you know, because of that one day in high school or whatever, they can't do it, and they may not. But I would like I think Kaylin said, don't count yourself out, right? Push yourself in and then see, right? Don't tell yourself no, because many times we find out that people who can get a clearance eventually. And then there are some initiatives out of the National Space Council in Alabama and Colorado and Florida. We've been working on some ideas that may come to fruition to help address this challenge, right? If it takes, on average, 6 to 18 months for somebody to get a security clearance, are there ways we can develop a pipeline where they can do some unclassified work, or maybe even go and do what some of us call a public good, right? Go be a professional in a classroom for 6 months while they're waiting for their clearance to come and do programming in a cleared position, right? So hopefully there'll be some things that we can do, and we are already doing, like with the Head Start program with universities. And then also, as Tom mentioned earlier, we are going deeper into the pipeline, the education pipeline, right? To let kids know in middle school and even elementary school that these kind of cool jobs exist, to set them up to get into that clearance pipeline, maybe when they're in college.
So Josh, what about Millennium? How do you all balance the desire to nurture talent, but also you only have so much money to hire people and you want the most experienced people. So how do you balance those priorities?
Yeah, so it's a number of things. Really, it's tying back to the culture. And, we have a culture where we really drive accountability down to the lowest levels. And so with that, down to the intern level, we have those individuals and employees supporting, major programs and major design reviews. And that really, from just a retention standpoint, again, at that intern level, keeps them excited, keeps them motivated, and motivates them to graduate their undergrad studies and come back and work for a company like Millennium. And kind of what Joe hit on is, we focus also on making sure that we start the security clearance process earlier on board when we do have interns with us for a 3 or 4 month stint. And that way, once they have graduated and do want to come back, that process is well into motion and they're able to go ahead and get cleared and work in those types of environments that have that really exciting and inspiring type work.
So Kaylin, at Terran Orbital, maybe you can comment on how you guys address sometimes those competing priorities. And also if you can maybe talk about opportunities for young people, because there's so many questions from people that are just graduating or students, and they seem to have a difficult time understanding where to begin, where the opportunities are, and how they can get on a constructive path towards a space career. Maybe if you can address that.
Am I back? Are you guys there?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
you're back.
All right, so I got a majority of that. I think it was how can young people kind of get their start?
Yeah, I mean, and kind of following on what Josh and Joe just talked about, how they're, you have needs for experienced people, but then you have a lot of young people that are trying to get started and you want to nurture some of that talent. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, absolutely. So while they're still in school, or they're finishing up school, and there is so much power in those internships, but some other programs that can be utilized in companies are apprenticeships, job rotation programs. And those are the opportunities that especially early career employees are going to want to look out for, because those are the ones where they're going to get that cross training. They're going to learn about what other departments do, and they're going to ultimately expand on their skill set.
Yeah, as I've talked to people, I know Kaylin's frozen for a second.
Yeah.
Hopefully coming back, but I've heard more about apprenticeship programs, something that I had not heard about as much in the past.
Apprenticeships and certifications are a growing trend across the space industry. And one of the places where I've seen Lockheed especially do some neat work is every year, the military graduates about a third of its people, largely with security clearances, and puts them out into the civilian world. And these are people that come with college benefits. They've got a lot going for them. And that's where I've seen Lockheed get on bases and some other firms here in Colorado Springs and really aggressively go after people who might have driven an M1 Abrams tank for the Army, but they have the necessary clearance to get started right away in space work.
Is Kaylin back?
I'm guessing she's restarting.
Okay. So maybe I'll just maybe tee up another question, or just combining a couple of different questions about workers that are transitioning from other industries. We see maybe some industries that have lots of layoffs. Comes and goes in waves. how does the space sector take advantage of maybe talent that is coming from other industries? Are there opportunities to do that? And how do you view that as a pipeline for talent? And along the same lines, there's a lot of talent that are not necessarily in LA or DC or Colorado, the hotspots, maybe in some areas of the country that are not as well known, but maybe there will be some talent available. So how do you maybe try to find some of those gems out there? I don't know if Joe, if you would like to start on that.
Yeah, I think happy to. Yeah, we touched on a couple of points there, right? So
Yeah.
yes, as other industries are transitioning or declining, right, most of these skills are transferable in some way to what is needed in the aerospace industry. You look at a lot of what we need, specifically at Lockheed Martin, right? A lot of coding, a lot of cyber, and that's where some of these currently the down cycles are. So we have been and continue to reach out to these kind of groups or in these areas, in these kind of industries to say, come consider aerospace. The military and veterans, right? Lockheed Martin is a partner of many organizations, including American Corporate Partners, which matches up mentors, right? Transitioning military personnel who want to connect with somebody in industry. And again, if many of them have a clearance, that's an added bonus. For somebody on the other end of the spectrum who has maybe not any direct experience, there are programs where we will train, right? You mentioned apprenticeships earlier, and Lockheed Martin's Advanced Manufacturing Technician Apprenticeship Program, or AMTAP. If you Google AMTAP Lockheed Martin, you'll probably find it. These are great career paths to come in and learn how to do wire harnesses and circuit boards and other things that start out at the technician level. And then you can use Lockheed Martin's tuition assistance benefits if you want to continue on. There are many people who love that path and stay on that path and do quite well on that path. But if you do want to then go maybe for a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree or even beyond that, there are many opportunities. So I think so much of the challenge we're talking about here just comes down to we need to harness this renewed interest in NASA's Artemis generation and the excitement of aerospace and all the cool things happening in low Earth orbit and beyond to let people know to come look at us, to come check out LockheedMartinJobs.com, the other companies' websites, to find an aerospace organization in your state, in your area, join it and start that networking process because we need you, we want you.
So Kaylin, when you were talking before, we had a little bit of audio trouble. So if you wouldn't mind maybe kind of recapping what you wanted to say about your interest in young talent and how you bring in junior talent into the company.
Yeah, so I was saying that we had a very successful internship program, and we actually brought some interns on part-time while they finished school. But some other avenues to explore are apprenticeships or cross-training or job rotation, where it gives them the opportunity to see what else is out there and to understand all of the different areas of the business to really bring it together. And that is going to give them not only more experience and add more value to their skill set, but helps kind of build that loyalty with them as well if we're giving them those opportunities. And to build on what Joe was just saying, we also offer the tuition reimbursement, and we had some employees use that where they've gone from technicians to engineers. And so those opportunities are out there, and it's important to tell and actually show them that those are there for them and to help them build their careers.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions is about remote work. And I know, Deborah, you've done some reporting on some of the trends in whether, the opportunities are in only in-person work, or is there more opportunities now in remote work? I think, maybe do you want to ask some of the panelists to comment on that? Because I think that's something that has come up in some of the Q&A here in the chat.
What I've heard, and I would love to have any of you discuss it, is I know that some of these jobs can't be remote because of security clearance issues, national security issues, for example. But so I've heard a lot about flexibility, people trying to build flexibility into the programs. Josh, do you want to start with that?
Absolutely. So yes, part of our culture at Millennium is we have implemented a flexible work schedule. And really the intent of that is to just really embody and show and demonstrate the work-life balance at Millennium. But part of coming to, sort of the work schedule at Millennium is we offer a hybrid once, it's communicated and well coordinated with your lead. And so that hybrid schedule works in the sense that you're in the office a few days and remote for the rest of the days. And it gets a little bit more challenging when, yes, there are classified efforts going on where those employees need to support those particular programs or efforts. But again, with coordination and communication, those issues or challenges are resolved. And, part of our culture and how we do business really is all about in-person learning and collaboration, real-time feedback. And that's even by design, that is how our company is configured. If you look at, if anyone has the opportunity to visit one of our sites, you walk in and it's just this giant think tank. No one is compartmentalized, no one is siloed, everyone is on the floor, ready to work and collaborate with each other. And so that's really the culture of, how we're able to really stay agile and fast is because of, the design on how our business itself is configured, and really the missions and the timelines that we're working to support our national security space programs.
Did anyone else want to jump in on that?
That's one thing that came up during some panels at the 38th Space Symposium, is especially the difficulties of the need to work in a skiff and being a mom or a dad. Especially with this generation that has been raised with a cell phone in their hands, life in a skiff is really difficult. And so what I've heard, from our partners is you need to communicate early and often, whatever the expectation might be to potential employees, so they're not, unhappy. You really need to do a lot of expectation management with people and show you can reward them in other ways with things like money, help, and time off.
And what is a skiff?
Oh man, you caught me. It's a special compartmentalized information facility, which is a place where you can go to talk about secretive stuff in government programs, and where you cannot take your cell phone, even if it's grown permanently attached to your hand.
So let me add to all that collectively, I think society learned a lot from COVID, right? Our numbers at Lockheed Martin, we went from less than 1% remote work to around 7% is what the figure seems to be. And even for the other, that's a sizable number, but even for the rest of the jobs, right? Lockheed Martin and aerospace in general, I think and Lockheed Martin specifically, we're an employer of choice. Flexible schedules, if you want to work 4/10s, you want to work 5/8s, that often can be worked out. Most people can also do at least some hybrid. So even though maybe only 7% are full-time remote, there's a good number, it seems to be in the 20 to 30%, where you can work hybrid sometimes, even if your job is to build hardware, so you have to be in the area, or even if you're classified, there are some things like training, seminars, other things that can be done and are frequently done remote. So a lot of things. And even for people who work in a classified environment, there's been a lot of efforts that we have undertaken at Lockheed Martin to make that to improve, right? I think it was a pretty good quality of life anyway, but things like to make sure you can get that message from your teacher when your child's teacher when your child is sick, right? There are now ways that you can receive that information, right, without your phone. It can come through a proper system and pop up on your desktop in a classified area. Simple things like putting electronic screens, like you kind of find in cruise ships, right, on the interior cabins that show the outside. So you come in the morning and you walk out and you're like, oh, it's snowing. Well, now you can know that before you before you walk outside. So there are a lot of things that I think we're working in the industry, and Lockheed Martin, a great place to work that does important things for our national security, our economic security, bringing technology to benefit life down here on Earth, pushing the bounds of exploration and technology, and you get to do these kind of things at Lockheed Martin. And there's often a way to really work with you and make a great work-life balance.
One of the things I've also been struck by is that, number one, aerospace jobs pay well. I'm sure Tom can back that up. And cleared jobs where you have security clearance, have a significant bump in pay. Is that correct?
And I'm just pulling up the number, but anyway, compared to the average, worker in the U.S., it makes $68,000 a year. The average worker in the space industry makes $127,000 a year. So you're pretty much doubling your money when you put space on your resume. That's incredible, but it's that issue of opening the door wider so that more people can get that opportunity from this prosperity that they can find in space.
Kaylin, you and I talked about K through 12, going to students earlier. Why is that important?
Well, they are the next generation, and they are going to be the ones who really carry the future of space and of aerospace. And this is also a great way to incorporate that piece that most companies are looking for now of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because as I believe it was Joe mentioned earlier, reaching new geographic and demographics and going into those communities that might not necessarily know that there's room in aerospace for them, or even just bringing STEM to them for school districts or schools that might be underfunded and not have the resources in order to teach those kids basic science, math, but also not even just STEM, but STEAM, and teaching children in the arts that there is room for them in aerospace as well. You have graphic designers, you have artists, you have everyone. There is a place, and it's important to let them know that earlier. The earlier that they're exposed to not only STEM but to aerospace, the more likely that it's going to stick with them throughout the rest of their schooling and through college. And then they're going to know, hey, I can go into aerospace if I want to. And so having those exposures also will help increase representation later on down the road, which inherently will bring in more people as well.
We only have a few minutes left. Was there anything else anyone wanted to say? And one thing I was thinking of, Joe, was your outreach. So the road trips you go on?
Yes, this is where we work a lot with organizations such as the Aerospace States Association that has chapters in many states. And we have, with our aerospace colleagues, we have often, and we still do, get out and go to different parts of the state, right? To get out of the areas where the clusters are, so rural areas and just other places where there aren't a lot of aerospace companies. And we do that for two primary reasons, well, three: to promote aerospace, right? To talk about how all of us benefit from aerospace, regardless of where we are. And, we use it so much in our daily lives. To seek potential suppliers and subcontractors. I mentioned at the beginning, like some businesses that have in other parts of the state have gotten involved in aerospace over the last many years. And then for STEM outreach, to do this demographic and geographic outreach, including the 2-week summer program. And we do a component of that virtual. So it is open to high school and college students from other states as well. And again, the real point of it is to try to spread the word about the cool, important things we do, and to reach communities and let people have an opportunity to learn about the great things that we do in aerospace that might not otherwise have it. So I would encourage people, if they're not already involved in an aerospace organization, there are many, many others that are great. I'm not listing them all, but that's a great way to find something in your area. I mentioned Aerospace States Association. There's a group called Citizens for Space Exploration, the Colorado Space Business Roundtable, There's lots of places and lots of ways for people of all ages to get involved. And I mentioned free memberships in AIAA for high school students. So that's a great way to get involved and to start building a network and learn what's out there.
Hey, Deborah and Sandra, I know there was a number of questions that were not answered and maybe pertaining to, hey, I'm either entry level, don't have that much experience, but kind of want to end on the note that we do give a lot of accountability to our lower level or entry level, I should say, engineers. And what that allows them to do is learn a lot within a short period of time. And it's really trial by error. And we have great mentors that, whether it be a structure subsystem across the enterprise, not necessarily in engineering, but across all disciplines, to where they are there to support them and make sure they are successful. And really, that's aligned with the missions that we're supporting. We're working on programs from cradle to grave that span upon 2 to 3 years, and for an entry-level engineer to kind of see it from cradle to grave is very rewarding and very inspiring. And that's really how we're able to retain that talent. So for the individuals that are in that particular position, I guess the last plug is that we're as we said, rapid growth of hiring. So please check out our website and see what's available for you all.
Great. Kaylin, any final comments from you?
No, just to kind of piggyback off of what everyone else has been talking about, there's always space, and at Terran Orbital, we are always looking for those new talents. We do have a very young workforce. We recently won 3 pretty big contracts, and with that, we are hiring for all types of engineering related positions. So go ahead, check out our jobs and our careers page on our website. And yeah, we would love to get anyone from early career all the way through experienced professionals.
Right. Tom, you were going to say something?
Yeah, here at Space Foundation, we are literally trying to push space workforce from K to gray. So we have those early programs for young students, all the way to continuing education for people who've been in the industry. So to access all that, all you have to do is surf on the web to cie.spacefoundation.org.
Thank you,
Great.
Tom. Deborah?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being with us. It was a pleasure talking to you. I know that you have a lot of other duties outside of this. So thank you for all of your time and answering all of the questions from our audience and our own questions. Look forward to talking.
And thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you for to the audience for joining. Thank you to our panelists for the insightful comments, and thank you to our sponsor, Millennium Space. Have a wonderful day.